Welcome to Stuart Miller Podcast. It's podcast time, and today we've got a very special guest. We've got Matt from High Tech Investigations. Over to you. What is High Tech Investigations?
Thank you very much for having me on the show this afternoon. High Tech Investigations specialize in mobile forensics, predominantly mobile phones.
Yep.
We touch on computer systems, laptops, PCs, etc., and also background reports pertaining to digital footprinting.
Sounds very complicated. And as the podcast progresses, it's going to be aimed at the normal person. So clearly, as you're speaking, it's all kind of digital gobbledygook. But hopefully...
I will intend to speak in a bit less tech jargon so that the people out there understand what I'm on about.
Because I've seen some of your podcasts, and you've certainly got my attention in terms of how you speak about the dangers of a mobile phone. But before we go into it, a mobile phone, everybody's got one. Everybody seems to have the modern mobile phone. It's literally a modern day wallet, different types of apps with banking details and other personal information. How dangerous is this?
I think a lot of people are really naive and do not understand how much data the modern day smartphone stores and the abilities of this modern day smartphone. So not only does it have an amazing array of benefits that it can give us, but it also has its downfalls at the same time, particularly at the moment pertaining to the amount of cyber attacks and attacks on mobile devices that we're having. They can be extremely vulnerable. So it is really important that people understand that not only are they our little pocket friends and can do everything on a day-to-day basis for us, but they also store a substantial amount of information that could get us stuck in a predicament should we not be aware of what we're up to.
I mean, right you are, but let's just take a step back. You've got different types of phones. For me, somebody who's not really iTech savvy, I've always had the iPhone, but then you've got the iOS, i.e. the iPhone, and then you've got the Androids. I mean, which one, why, what should you choose?
Typically, the Android phone is based towards the vast majority of the market. It is an easier to use operating system. There are many different models, devices that run the Android operating system. The iOS, however, is predominantly for the iPhone, the operating system for the iPhone. It is well known to be a lot more secure. However, in recent times, there have been breaches pertaining to the iOS system. However, not to the extent that Android devices have been breached in recent times. It's also really important to understand that in regard to Android devices, there are a number of cases where many people have purchased used devices which have had spyware injected in them prior to people obtaining these devices.
Just coming back on that, I mean, you've got the iOS, i.e., as you say, it's affiliated to the Apple type stuff, and then the Android. Which one should we be choosing? I mean, everyone's got personal preferences. I get user friendliness and updates, but what should we be choosing? Me, I've been an iPhone man all my life. Not because it's, I don't know any better. So what should we be choosing?
Personally, I would always choose an iOS operating system or an iPhone over the Android. However, the vast majority of the people out there are not in a fortunate enough position to own an iOS or an iPhone simply because of the costs of them. Hence the reason them going down the Android route. There are plenty of phones out there that you can pick up brand new that have an Android operating system. However, you get what you pay for. If you purchase an iPhone with an iOS operating system, the Play Store on iOS is extremely secure. They vet every application coming through on a regular basis and have security updates on the platform a lot more regularly than Android. Android, however, do not regulate their application store as much as the iOS. So what you tend to find happens is the vast majority of, or a vast more number of applications on the Android Play Store, and there are rogue applications on there. These rogue applications can have keyloggers in. They can watch every key press you do on your phone. They have got microphones that they can activate. They can activate your camera should any spyware get in the phone. It's a very dangerous platform to be on, particularly at the moment. However, we need to understand that if you do a bit of research and you educate yourself enough, there are methods and there are techniques and certain processes you can put in play to mitigate the dangers of having an Android device somewhat.
Okay, so when I complain about having an iOS device always updating, I should be happy that it's updating because it's actually fighting against those external forces trying to get into my system, then, isn't it?
Correct, it is. So the reason an update will be sent out is because there will be security vulnerabilities that have been noticed within that particular system, and they will be patched, security patched. When a security patch is issued, an update goes out to all the customers. This is done a lot less regularly on the Android devices, hence the reason, and as they're about 75% of our population use Android devices. So from an attacker or a malicious perspective, it makes much more sense to attack a vulnerable platform with 75% of a population who have Android devices. So attacking an iOS system that is extremely secure and less of a population who own it wouldn't make much sense. Hence the reason Android devices are attacked on a much more regular basis.
So there it is, guys. When you get an update on an iOS system, don't complain. Update as quickly as possible because you don't want to lose that valuable information that you're all trying to protect. Okay, moving on. Let's deal with common myths. I mean, I get it all the time. You hear it on social media platforms and other videos being made that the police can't get into your phone, or alternatively cases we've dealt with where downloads have been served that relate to certain versions of iPhones and Androids. And there's a common myth when it comes to the iPhone 6 or 7, up to that, or certain versions of the Samsung they can get into. Is that true? Or does it apply across the board? They can get into any phone?
It is much more difficult to get into a newer model phone with an updated operating system and software. So if I had an iPhone 14 or an iPhone 15 and I was running the most recent software update, it would be a lot more difficult to get into that phone. If you have an older model phone, which is running an older software on it, there will be vulnerabilities pertaining to that software. So an attacker could theoretically find the vulnerabilities and gain access to the device that way.
You're speaking like a lawyer now, and I like your choice of words. Could get into a phone. What that basically means is they will get into your phone and it's only a matter of time.
Well, it all depends on how serious the case is and how much resources they put into the specific case. Now, it's well known that an iPhone is predominantly a lot more difficult to get into than an Android device. However, a lot of it pertains to the settings that the user had set on the device. You can have an Android device that is more secure than an iPhone, depending on the user. So a lot of it tends to be user fault when someone gets into the phone, as they're unaware of what settings to put in place to secure their phone.
Okay, splinter question, just deviating from it and coming back to passwords. There's this common myth: the easier your password, the easier it is to break into a phone. Is that true, or is it the same kind of technology that's used to get into a phone? It matters not what your password is.
I wouldn't say that would necessarily be the case. It depends how much valued of a target you are, and how many resources, how much resources they put into trying to crack your particular device. Now, if it's a higher end case with a lot of money involved, a money laundering case, a high-end drugs case, they will implement all the resources they have at hand. So regardless of the length or complication of your passcode on the phone, they will get into it. So that's food for thought there.
They're coming for you, basically, matters not. All right. Okay, let's take a step back. We've talked about the posh phones, and everybody likes these posh phones. But then you get the old Nokias. You get an Asda for £12, £15. I refer to the 6210 when I used to have one. Are they easy to get into, or are they more difficult?
The thing with the feature phones is what they're referred to as. The old black and white phones, or burner phones, as we know, often referred to in the forensics as feature phones. They send text messages and you make phone calls on them. Now, every text message is recorded by your network provider, and every phone call is recorded by your network provider. So although you may not have the applications on your phone, you have every record of a text message and every record of a phone call being made from that phone. That phone can also be located through a number of means. So is it safer? No, not really, as everything on that phone, although it's very limited as to what's on that phone, but the calls and the text messages can be recorded and not necessarily extracted from the device, but straight from the network provider.
Okay, so there you've got it, guys. It matters not if you throw the phone away, everything's recorded on the server, the network provider. But then again, isn't that the same principle for iPhones then, and Androids?
You tend to find people who use smartphones will use applications.
Yeah.
Now, the network provider will not have records of transactions or transmissions taking place pertaining to the conversations on the chat platforms you're chatting on. So they will not have records of Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp, etc. They will only have phone call records and text message records. But anyone who's got a smartphone needs to know how many of us use the phone call feature on a phone nowadays, how many of us send text message on a smartphone. We don't, we use applications, and these are not recorded by the service providers.
We've had instances where the recipient has kept his phone, but the sender has got rid of their phone. And when we're representing the sender, his instructions are very simple. There's no phone, there's nowhere to be seen, and they can't get it. And relying on that principle, i.e. any messages I've got are within that app. But the recipient's phone is thereafter located, and within his phone are all the messages sent back and forth. Is it right in saying that the messages sent by me, I'm saying that incorrectly, I can't explain it properly. Basically what I'm trying to say is if I get rid of my phone on an Android or an iOS, it matters not, because if they've got your phone, your messages are still going to be on there. It's not just one-sided.
That is correct. However, the issue comes in where they need to attribute the handset to the individual.
Yeah.
This is where the complication comes in, and it becomes extremely difficult if you have a decent defense team to defend yourselves, whereas if you're found with the phone in your possession, there is no way out of that. However, if the phone is not in your possession, the prosecution need to prove and attribute that device to yourselves, which complicates the case that much more.
I.e. attribution.
Attribution.
But then common features of attribution will be, for example, and correct me if I'm wrong, your most common numbers, for example, if your mum's number's in there, your partner's number's in there. Alternatively, you've got bed and breakfast analysis, i.e. where that phone is laid to rest. Anything else you can think of?
Not offhand, no.
All right, fine. Okay, dealing then with the cell site aspect, and we'll go into this in more detail in terms of its legitimacy and it's prone to hacking. But certainly, again, you've got the three different types of phones. You've got the iOS, you've got the Android, and then you've got the old school Nokia. Is it the same principles of cell site?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay. And as far as cell site is then concerned, is it a perfected science? Is it prone to hacking?
I'm limited as to what I can say or what I should say.
Yeah.
However, it is known that there are vulnerabilities within the system.
Okay. Can one manipulate cell site to their advantage? For example, can a cell site mast be moved?
What can effectively happen is if a hacker gains access to the database pertaining to the base transceiver station, the coordinates can be altered on there. It's also been known in the past few months that there's an investigation going on by the Home Office pertaining to this, as well as the fact that software has been manipulated. So when a report has been issued during a court case, and a lot of evidence pertaining to where the phone has been omitted from the report, which has played a huge part in the case. So I think at the moment, it's best that we take a back seat and let the relevant departments investigate further until they get to a conclusive decision and notify the public as to where we stand.
Clearly, watch this space because if what you're saying is correct, there's going to be masses and masses of applications before the Court of Appeal in relation to incorrect evidence tendered at court cases. But as you say, let's just leave it there.
Let's leave it there and let's see what the future holds for us.
Okay, I'm going to touch on spyware, but before doing so, I'm going to give you a personal experience. Some of the cases we deal with are very high profile, national security level homicides, and certainly after coming out of police stations or court hearings, it may be me being either paranoid or sometimes I feel, certainly in the old days, not so much now, but when I used to have the Nokia, that there was some form of interference as if I'm on a phone call, but there's somebody else listening. Now, am I either paranoid or is that possible, or was that possible? Let's talk about it historically.
No, you're not paranoid at all. Mm-hmm. That has been the case in the past, and it is the case even more so at present.
Okay, fine. So let's just comfortably then move on to spyware. I mean, you hear about it all the time. There was a Canadian case recently on the internet where somebody died as a result of a horrible, vicious ex who inserted spyware onto her system, was locating her, tracking her every movement, watching her in her house while she ate, knew who she'd spoken to when she was speaking to a third party on the phone. Is that possible, or is that all that nonsense? What is this spyware nonsense?
It is entirely possible. I think people are not aware as to how sophisticated the modern day spyware is. A lot of people out there will be well aware of the likes of Pegasus, and that came out in about 2016. The reason Pegasus is so notorious is it was the first known spyware that could attack the iOS system. And basically what would happen is the iOS phone, your iPhone, would receive a text message, and the moment you click to the link, it injected itself within the system. It would then search for vulnerabilities on the device and jailbreak the device before rooting itself in the back end of the phone. Once inside your device, it is quite possible for them to activate the speaker, microphone, to activate the camera, to watch every key press you press on your keypad, so they will have every single password pertaining to every account that you log into from your phone. They can monitor your locations. Everything you could do as a user, whoever was in control of the spyware could do, and there was no way of you telling whether that spyware was actually embedded on the device. That's how discreet it was.
But then, I mean, it's scary stuff. Whilst you're speaking, you're actually saying I've got an online stalker, and it's quite scary. I mean, to the common person, to the normal person, watching this podcast, how would they identify as to whether or not they've been the victim of somebody uploading spyware?
The vast majority of the time, no one will be none the wiser. But people look around them and look at their colleagues and acquaintances and assume that they've spoken about them, as they have absolutely no idea how certain people have got such damning evidence or data pertaining to them and what they have been up to in their day-to-day lives. It's really important to understand that the more modern version of Pegasus does not need you to click a link. All that they need to do is call your phone from an unknown number. The moment your phone rings, they hang up, so you do not even need to answer it, and the spyware is embedded in your phone. You are none the wiser. Your assumption is you've just got a missed call from a number from a foreign state, a foreign country, or an unknown number, and you palm it off. You don't know anything more. Little do you know, embedded in your device and rooted in the back end of your phone is the spyware. You will have absolutely no idea it's there unless you go to a specialist who will take your phone apart, have a look at your phone. I do it to an extent. I use a number of tools, including the MVT, which is the Mobile Verification Toolkit, where we can scan a device and work out whether it has been susceptible to the likes of Pegasus or dark matter or FinSpy, which are other really common spywares used by governments and law enforcement agencies, as well as malicious actors.
Okay, so let me just get it straight. I mean, once infected by the different types of spyware there is, are you saying there's no key performance indicators? There's no indicators?
There is absolutely no indicator whatsoever. A decent spyware will not be picked up unless you take your phone to a specialist who specializes in searching back the logs and understanding patterns, traffic network, etc., and realizing whether your device has truly been compromised or not. It's not a matter of I'll reset my device or I'll just throw my device away and I'll get going again, because all you will be doing is by resetting it, they're embedded in the back end of the phone. So when you reset a device, all it does is wipe what's on the interface. So you as a user will see your applications on the phone. That's all a reset does, is wipe the applications. The operating system, which is based in the rooted part of the phone, will contain the spyware, and you will not be able to see it at all.
So just some user-friendly advice then. I mean, not trying to scare people out there, I'm not scaremongering, but is it not advisable for every person then to take their phone to an expert at least every 2 to 3 months to see whether or not there's something sinister out there?
That is a good idea. My theory is if you have nothing to hide, there should be no reason to. However, there are people out there who do have concerns that they're being monitored. And if that's the case, I would strongly suggest it. However, one needs to understand that once the device has been checked and scanned and it has been compromised, you may get a new device, and that new device just needs to receive a missed call and it's reinfected again. So once they have your number, it's game over pretty much. the cycle will continue and continue, and you will not be aware of that until you get your phone checked again.
It's very scary James Bond type stuff then, isn't it?
A lot of people do not think outside the box. They have got blinders on, and they're totally unaware as to the sophistication of various agencies and various malicious actors that will use this spyware and do not think it'll ever happen to them. However, it's happening at an unprecedented rate at the moment. I know there have been some high-profile cases regarding celebrities, regarding VIPs, CEOs of companies, government officials over the past couple of years. On our main media stations, they've highlighted these cases as well, not to a maximum effect, but somewhat touched on it. So it is pretty rife out there. When one case gets brushed under the carpet, another one rises its head.
A common question I always have asked is if the police have my phone, what chance do they have to get in if I don't give my PIN number?
Every chance. What people need to understand is a lot of it will depend on the severity of the case that they may be investigating. If you do not hand over the passcode, that does not necessarily mean they will not get into the device. There's a very high probability they will get into the device. However, this depends on a number of factors. This depends on what model device it is, what make device it is, what operating system you're running on that particular device, and what settings you have set on that particular device. Now, a lot of people are under the assumption of, well, I've got an iPhone and the police have got my iPhone and it's an iPhone 15 with the latest software update, they will not get into it. That's totally incorrect. You just need to make one small mistake or put one setting incorrectly on there, and that device is susceptible to being broken into. However, pertaining to iPhones in particular here, if an iPhone is reset or switched off, powered off, it goes into what we call BFU, before first unlock mode. So even if someone did manage to get into that device, the files behind that would be encrypted, which would be very difficult to access. There would be more file logs as opposed to your interactions on your applications. However, if the device is still powered on, they will keep that device powered on, put it into airplane mode, because as an investigator, a forensic investigator, it is easier to access that device after the first unlock. So if your device is powered off, you have less chance of them accessing it. If it's powered on, it's much more easily accessible.
Okay.
The data on that is.
All right. Let's just deal with the iOS and the smartphone. What about the iCloud? Now, you've got the iCloud affiliated to the iPhone. We have a lot of people asking us the same question. And clearly, we've got to remain neutral on this. Our advice has to be impartial. We can't be seen to pervert the course of justice or assisting somebody to do something wrong whilst the police investigation is ongoing. Okay, another question I'm commonly asked, and we've got to remain neutral on this point, okay? We can advise, but we can't tell people what to do, okay? The police have got my iPhone, whether it's on or off, there's an iCloud attached to it. And the question is can I delete stuff from my iCloud and will the police know? And if I delete stuff from my iCloud, can they bring it back? Multiple questions in one, I know. Over to you.
Okay, once they have taken possession of your iPhone, what will happen is it'll be put into airplane mode as a matter of urgency. Once your device is put in airplane mode, you cannot access your iCloud. You cannot send a command. So you can go and log into a device somewhere else and attempt to send a command to wipe the iPhone, to wipe your iCloud. As the device is not receiving signal, it will not receive the command. So when it cannot receive the command, nothing can be wiped from the device. So I know a lot of people out there are very intrigued by this question, and a lot of people out there go, well, I'll just wipe my device. There is no way around it. Once your device has been taken and been put into airplane mode, from there all the way through to the forensics department, it will not receive signal. And whilst it is not receiving signal, it cannot receive the command to wipe itself. So theoretically, every bit of information, including your iCloud data, will still be on that device.
Okay, that's intriguing actually, because that's going to dispel a lot of myths. Okay, now, a splinter question on that. Once it's been put into airplane mode and an attempt is made to wipe the iCloud, can the authorities establish or identify that an attempt's been made?
If it's not put into airplane mode, it will immediately be put into a Faraday case or Faraday box, which is the equivalent. You will get some smart people out there who will block the notification, so you cannot pull down the top screen and put it into notification, into airplane mode. So to combat this, they put it straight into a Faraday case or Faraday bag, which does exactly the same thing. So no matter what you do, no, there is no way around it in order to delete it. Now, pertaining to someone attempting to delete it, there wouldn't necessarily be a record because the device wouldn't come online. So there would be no need to get a record. When forensics department received the device, they would do an extraction from there. Only afterwards, at a later date, when you receive the device back, would that device come online again.
Okay, just a step back again. Sorry about this. Too many steps back at the moment.
No, carry on.
And it's intriguing stuff. So we've talked about the iPhone, which has been put into airplane mode, and the fact that the police thereafter, it's in their control. And we're talking about a phone which has been accessed. We're about the phone that's not been accessed, and they don't have the PIN code to get into it, and the iCloud's yet still open, but the device is at the police station. Can a person still get into the iCloud?
Absolutely no, because they do not have signal being emitted from that device, and if there's no signal being emitted or to that device, it cannot receive a command. And as long as it cannot receive the command to delete anything on that device, nothing will happen. Everything on that device will stay on the device.
And as you pointed out earlier on, that kind of stuff, when it comes to the applications and the cloud, is unique to the phone per se, not upstairs where everybody thinks that their applications are in theory.
That is correct, yes.
Well, if that's correct, and I get a new phone, and I put my new SIM into it, how can everything automatically updates onto it then?
Because you've got signal, and your signal will be received from the device that you're backing up from.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it now.
Okay.
It's a very simple,
Okay.
to be honest with you,
It's very simple. If it doesn't have a signal, you can't send any communication. You cannot send a command to it. If it's got signal, it will receive the command and reply to you.
Yeah.
But as long as that's blocked off, it can't receive anything.
Because the normal fable is I don't care if the police have got my phone, I can get it to my iCloud. And
Absolutely.
you just kind of...
All they will do
Yeah.
is delete the iCloud elsewhere,
Yeah.
so on any other device that's attached. So you may have 3 or 4 phones with the same iCloud.
Yeah.
The police take one iPhone, and your assumption is you go home, you get your other device, and you delete your iCloud, and it says deleted, and you delete the handset itself. It cannot delete from the device that's in the possession of the police for the simple reason that the device cannot receive the commands to be wiped.
Again, Matt, you're talking about what access the establishment, the authority has. But surely PIN code, codes, whatever, how did the police get it? I mean, is it just one of those kind of USB into a phone and random numbers going around, tick, 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 tick? Or how do they access these phones?
Depending on who you are and the severity of the case will depend on what resources are put into cracking the device and gaining access to it. Modern day technology, modern day software, particularly from the likes of Celebrite, is so sophisticated and so advanced that they can break into virtually any device. Now, depending on the severity of your case and the value of the case as well, will depend on how much resources they put in. So if someone gets the phone taken off them and 6 months later, nothing's been recovered from the phone and the phone's given back to them, their assumption is the phone hasn't been broken into and the police do not know what they're doing and I'm one up on them. That is totally incorrect. What they may well have done is gain access to the device, monitor who the conversations have been with. There may be bigger fish they're looking at. The device is closed and given back to you and other people are being monitored.
Intelligence.
6 months, 12 months down the line, everybody gets picked up and no one stops and thinks about what's happened a year earlier. The other thing we need to understand is if there's a very high profile case and the most advanced and experienced forensics experts are unable to get into a device, they will send that to Celebrite's head office, which is based in Israel, and they have an in-house service there that will guarantee access to any phone pertaining to any operating system out there. So there's a guaranteed access to every single mobile phone. And that's a higher level case that forensics cannot gain access to in this country that will be sent abroad for an in-house service.
I see on Instagram loads of other solicitors and experts attempting to comment upon mobile phone evidence and the police can get into it. And recently you saw in the past the Encrypted case fiasco, where literally hundreds, if not thousands, of organized crime groups on an international scale were taken down. Now use that as a precedence. I always say this, but again, you're hearing it from the expert directly himself. If Encrypted can be broken into, is it not possible for WhatsApp to be infiltrated?
I think you're pretty naive if you think something cannot be. gained access to. One just needs to understand, I understand that the Encro platform was broken into. In hindsight, you had to have been pretty stupid to think you could pick up a phone that you bought from an internet site where you never knew who on earth was sending it to you, and honestly believe that that phone was not infected with spyware already before you're receiving it. Really naive. A lot of these people are not very tech savvy.
Yeah.
It's all about the money, and they were blindsided. That is my understanding on it. Listen, if you're going to play with fire, expect to get burned.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're switching back to your initial question here, and you ask about gaining access to the likes of WhatsApp. Now, what a lot of people need to understand is you get a lot of people out there in the criminal underworld who will turn around and say, well, I've got a Google Pixel 8 and I've removed the operating system and I put a graphene operating system on there because graphene is the best operating system. It's so secure, no one can get into it. What I need to explain and what these people need to understand is this is totally incorrect. Graphene is a privacy operating system and not an anti-surveillance operating system. There is a remarkable difference between privacy and anti-surveillance. Privacy means it's not sending data back to servers pertaining to certain applications on the phone. So if you have Facebook, it's not sending data back to Meta, etc. It's embedded within the phone. The surveillance side of this comes in where we all need to understand, and a lot of people do not realize this, every single mobile phone has two operating systems. Now, we have an operating system that we know of as an end user. If you've got an iPhone, you've got the iOS, and you can see that on the interface. You can see all your applications. However, the same goes for Android devices and any device which is running the graphene operating system. There is a second operating system, and this is embedded in the firmware near the secondary processor at the back of the phone where the operating system is. So you as an end user cannot see or access this part of the phone. This second operating system runs everything radio frequency related. So this receives commands from the cell towers. Now, if your phone or you as an individual are under surveillance, who owns our cell towers? Who owns our frequencies? Ofcom. Ofcom govern it. They work hand in hand with the agencies. All they need to do is come from the back end through the radio frequency part of your device, and they're already inside your phone. So people are totally misled by assuming that the likes of graphene operating systems are secure and surveillance will not prevail as far as they're concerned. This is a myth. Yes, they help pertaining to privacy, but when it comes to surveillance, there is no way past receiving commands from a cell tower station that are controlled by government agencies and by Ofcom. And the commands that are sent to every mobile device to the radio frequency section where the second operating system is are automatically received. The device is designed to automatically receive a command. So if I send a command from a tower to that phone, it will automatically receive it. There is no security protection stopping it coming through. So automatically, someone is in the back of your phone.
I mean, this is real shocking stuff. Is there nothing one can do to prevent this? Or is it just part and part of the manufacturer's kind of work ethic and you can't do nothing about it? I mean, what can we do?
There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Your phone is only as secure as the networks it operates on. People need to understand this. You can have the most secure phone in the world, but if your network is controlled by someone else, your phone is not secure.
That's it. Every phone is operated via a SIM card. Is it possible to clone a SIM card?
Most definitely, yes, it is possible to clone a SIM card. It is very difficult for someone in the private sector to clone a SIM card, particularly the newer model SIM cards, as there is a lot of security features on these particular SIM cards. However, the likes of Celebrite do offer a service where they can clone SIM cards. So if an individual is under surveillance, there is not a problem duplicating that particular SIM card pertaining to that individual, which means every two-factor authentication, every text message and every phone call that person receives on their device will be received elsewhere.
And again, can you identify if your SIM card has been cloned, bearing in mind your phone is working in tandem with the cloned card? Is there any kind of indicators?
There are absolutely no indicators. The spywares that they use, that are being used in today's day and age, are so sophisticated. They're designed to not only infiltrate a system, but to also cover their footsteps from behind. So not once it's gained access from a particular point, the door is closed from behind it. So you do not know that that door has been opened.
All right. Look, sometimes on occasion, we're at court and you'll see kind of friends changing SIM cards. Please, can I put my SIM card in your phone to make a call? How safe is that?
Well, it depends who the person is who's changing the SIM card with you. Why would they be putting a SIM card in someone else's phone to make a phone call? What has that SIM card been involved in the past? Has it made phone calls? Is it involved in crime? Is it involved in sending malicious text messages? If it has, and they've taken it back out your device, there will be a record on your particular handset as having had that SIM card in your phone and sending a message or making a phone call.
What about data? I mean, apart from the record of the fact that a call has been made stroke text message, if it's a kind of smartphone, would the data from the SIM card be left in that phone? And alternatively, would data from the phone be kind of absorbed into the SIM card?
The base transceiver stations have databases which record every incoming call and text message and every outgoing call and text message. So once a call or a text message is made, your local cell tower, the base transceiver station that pertains to that particular tower will have a record of every bit of traffic coming in and every bit of traffic going out. So yes, it most definitely can attach that SIM card to your device.
So automatically, where, for example, you say, I don't know X, but telephone evidence is then produced showing that your mobile phone had your friend's SIM card in it at one stage, is then clearly evidence of association then, isn't it?
Most definitely it is, yes.
So be careful, guys, when you're borrowing somebody your mobile phone or alternatively using third-party SIM cards. Let's talk about some scary stuff. The Russian SIM card, commonly referred to as the updated Encro. Over to you.
Unfortunately, and sorry to burst everyone's bubbles out there, the Russian SIM card or the encrypted SIM cards that you were all sold do not work to the extent that one assumes they work. I think a lot of people are under the assumption that these SIM cards, once placed into a mobile device, are untraceable, they're encrypted, no one can understand what's going on or intercept the transmissions that are going on. This is absolute rubbish. One needs to understand that when a mobile device makes a call and it's picked up by the closest available cell tower, the base transceiver station has what we call an MSC, which is a mobile switching center. And that will then relocate the call elsewhere. Within that database, there is a log kept. What SIM card made the call, what device the SIM card was in, so we'll know the IMEI number, the serial number of the device, the IMSI number, the IMSI number on the actual SIM card itself, the number that's underneath the little gold strip on a SIM card, and a log is made. Now, as much as one may assume that the card is encrypted and no one knows what you're saying, we go back to my earlier explanation pertaining to mobile phones, and that's your phone is only as safe as your network. So if the mobile switching center and the base transceiver station are keeping logs and records of every call coming in and every call going out, including text messages, etc., there will be data pertaining to that particular SIM card in that particular handset. So as much as one may assume that they're safe using a Russian SIM card, it's a myth. They do not work to the extent that people assume they work. I may as well go get an O2 SIM card and it perform exactly the same functions.
Guys, you got to listen to this guy. I mean, certainly if this information was out there at least 6 months ago, there'd be half the people in custody.
I think the government would save a lot of money too.
I'm telling you, all right. Look, just coming back on it and then moving on. The PGP phones. I was the victim of a kind of prank where I was at a location and somebody ordered X amount of pizzas from a shop using my telephone number, and I kind of went crazy thinking I never ordered this, but they had my mobile phone number and I had to be the bigger man, and then I paid for it, and then there was another kind of order that I had to pay for, and I was kind of shook and actually got scared thinking, who is using my number and has my phone been hacked? Now, kind of cross-referencing that to the defense work we do, I'm saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, and what can we do to identify this? There's systems out there, for example, the PGP, where if they get your mobile phone number, they can put it into their device, and thereafter calls can be made and the recipient will see your number as opposed to somebody else's number. How true is that?
Brilliant question. And this will pertain to the Russian SIM cards as well. Now, this is called phone number spoofing. So on the interface of your phone, the assumption is another number's been generated or another number's been used, which is the same theory as the people who have the ideology that Russian SIM cards are perfectly safe. My SIM card is designed to make a phone call off another number. So when if I was to call you, it wouldn't show up my true number, it would show up another number. That is mobile phone called spoofing. It will spoof it on the interface. However, security protocol, which is on the cell towers and the base transceiver stations, will not transfer a call any further if a number has been spoofed. There is security protocol on there, so it will register the true identity of the device and the original SIM card before it can transfer a call. If it realizes it's being spoofed at systems level, it will not transfer the call. So it transfers the call, and there is a record of the true identity of the handset and the SIM card through the database on the base transceiver station. And you as an end user would just receive the number that is spoofed. So it is a gimmick. Does not work, and people are under the assumption that, yes, because another number showed up on their screen, it is working. That only works as a gimmick. It's spoofing a number. Theoretically, the number is always logged within the database of the cell tower and base transceiver station. So there is no way around it. It's an absolute myth. As much as people will say, well, I'll just do this, I'll just do that, I'll get around it like this, you're only as safe as the network you operate on. And who controls the networks? Ofcom. And who works hand in hand with Ofcom? Government agencies. So people, wake up.
Yeah, but again, I mean, it is quite scary when I get what you're saying. When you do the kind of research, you can get into the service providers and find out it wasn't you and your number was spoofed. But still, for that split second, when your number's showing up on someone's phone, you know, it becomes scary, man.
It is most definitely quite intimidating. It is, yes.
All right. We all have the facility and we all use it. The Bluetooth technology, okay? Now, again, I've been in situations where I've actually gone into my car, switched my car on, and the Bluetooth has come up and it says pair with this device. A normal person will probably just reject it. But what's all that about? I mean, why does that happen?
I think a lot of people are none the wiser to actually understanding how much data a new modern vehicle stores. Now, let me go to the root of your question. When you pair a mobile phone to a modern vehicle, it downloads a substantial amount of data from your mobile device into the vehicle. The memory of the vehicle stores this data. A lot of people are under the assumption these are temporary files. These are not necessarily temporary files. If you move away from the vehicle with your phone and I have a device that plugs into the OBD port, I can theoretically extract every bit of data that's been downloaded from your mobile device into the memory of the vehicle without even needing a passcode. So you can have the most secure phone in the world, but if you have paired it to your vehicle, there is a way I can extract the data from your phone through your vehicle because you've left it in the memory of your vehicle.
But do I have to pair first, though?
Yes, you would have to pair it. So either use a USB or you can pair it via Bluetooth. But the moment you press, quite often it's a bit of a trick question. So on the interface of the device within the vehicle, it will say, what would you like us to show? Your contacts, your call register. So you will press those two. However, it's automatically designed in modern vehicles to extract the entire contents of the phone, or near enough the entire contents of the phone, pertaining to the various applications on there, etc. So, as secure as your phone may be, if I went to pick your phone up from somewhere and I had access to your car keys, I don't need to get into your phone with a passcode. I can walk up to your vehicle, switch your ignition on, and navigate through your phone that's still locked in the vehicle, on the interface of the vehicle. I can access your applications, your chats, your emails, all your images, videos, your social media accounts. As long as they're downloaded and on the vehicle, or your vehicle is paired with that, I can access them. And a lot of people are under the assumption, well, you got my phone, you can't get into it. Yes, I can. It's called social engineering, using another method to get into a device that we cannot get into straight away. So if you think the police won't get into that, but they've got your car keys, they will get into your phone through the OBD port and extract the data that's embedded in your vehicle. Now, it's extremely difficult to remove that data.
That was my next question. I mean, clearly, you've got it on the car. Isn't there just simply a button that says delete? factory setting?
One needs to understand that law enforcement government agencies have very close working relationships with the vehicle manufacturers. So what people need to understand is all modern vehicles have Wi-Fi. What the Wi-Fi does is it connects back to a server and it transmits a ton of data back to the server. So once the memory is full, pertaining to the telematics on the vehicle, how many people have been in the vehicle, where that vehicle's been, the speeds the vehicle's been traveling at, who was in the vehicle, what weight the people were in the vehicle, were the seatbelts on, etc. All this data is sent back to a server. These car manufacturers obviously work hand in hand with various agencies, and they can access the data pertaining to who was in that vehicle, who had their window down, where the vehicle was, did the boot open at this time, did the door close at this time, and this is how they can forensically link an individual or group of people to a vehicle. It's also important to understand that even if you delete the device that you paired with the vehicle, it does not delete the memory within the vehicle that has been downloaded from your mobile phone. It simply removes the pairing, so the data will still be there. The best analogy I can do of this is if you've got a mobile phone and you take a mobile phone to a shop because you intend to sell it. You reset the phone. With a vehicle, there is no way to reset it. So what do? You pass it on to the next person who just loads their phone on and loads their data on top of one, on top of another, on top of another. There is no passcode to get into the OBD port and extract the data that pertaining to all the mobile devices that have been attached to that. Now, touching on that, there was a recent study done and a bit of research done in the UK where a hire vehicle from a specific airport had a check done on it, and there were 67 mobile phones that had been attached to that vehicle, and the data pertaining to all 67 phones was still embedded within that vehicle. So it was quite easy to put a device in with a piece of software and extract the data from all 67 phones. So whereas a mobile phone, you would reset it, a vehicle, you don't reset it. Is it possible to reset this data, and is it possible to stop this data being sent to third-party servers? Third-party servers will not necessarily, as far as I'm aware, but I wouldn't take this for granted, extract the data pertaining to a mobile phone. That would extract the data pertaining to who's been in the vehicle, where the vehicle's been, speeds it was traveling at, when the windows were opened, when the doors, the boot, etc. were opened. However, pertaining to the mobile data on that vehicle, that is still embedded in the vehicle. That is not sent to a third party. However, one needs to understand that if you're under surveillance as well, you need to consider the fact that yes, it is very possible if it's a more modern vehicle and it has Wi-Fi, for authorities to switch the microphone on in the vehicle and listen to everything that's being said within that vehicle. So you do not necessarily need to make a phone call. If you're driving and you're in the vehicle, the microphone can be switched on. However, you need to be a high-profile target for this to happen.
But again, as you said, it can't be deleted. It's there in the history, and it just adds, and it is what it is.
I say it cannot be deleted. There are a couple of companies out there that will delete the data. I offer that service as well. You need to understand and put yourself in a position of a CEO or a VIP or a celebrity. If you've had a vehicle and you are passing the vehicle on, you may have hired the vehicle, you may be selling the vehicle, you do not necessarily want a third party to be able to access your personal data from your mobile phone. So what would you naturally do? You should naturally get in touch with someone who can deep wipe the vehicle, forensically wipe the data on that vehicle prior to being passed on to someone else. It makes headlines with some journalists, and I'm not going to name anyone in particular, but it's common sense that there are rogue individuals out there who have access to VIPs, CEOs and celebrities' vehicles, and it takes a matter of 30 seconds to plug a device in and whip all the information off pertaining to any mobile phone that was attached to that vehicle. So it's really important to understand if you're going to get rid of a vehicle, or if you have paired your phone to a vehicle and you are a high-profile person, it's really important to remove the data on that vehicle from the mobile phone prior to selling the vehicle.
But again, Matt, look, it's all the myths are usually affiliated to mobile phones. And it's kind of refreshing to know that apart from the mobile phone, there's other things out there that affect your security as well. Something as basic as your car.
Correct.
But then, say for example, you've talked about the car, but say I walk into a local coffee shop and I decide to use their internet. What then? Does my data automatically go onto their server as well? Where does it stop?
There will be a record of that. It is extremely important, especially in today's day and age, to never use a third party's Wi-Fi. Do not walk into a McDonald's, do not walk into a Costa, do not walk into a hotel and use their Wi-Fi. There are sophisticated hackers out there who will set up a fake device that will trick your mobile phone into thinking that they need to connect to it. This is called a man-in-the-middle attack. So all the traffic that passes through your device, or everything you're searching for, will be being filtered by them. So this is why I say it's extremely important to never, ever connect your device to a Wi-Fi that is not your home network.
Wow. I mean, we all look for that Wi-Fi on holiday. And certainly if you're out at a coffee shop, someone like me who's waiting to go into court or a police station, you just want to log onto that Wi-Fi and just do your work. But then, okay, fine. We won't do it. Take your advice on board. We then use our hotspot. But then once I've opened a hotspot, isn't that open to kind of infiltration?
Not as long as your device is secured.
Okay.
So if your device is secured, if you've hotspotted it to your mobile phone is secure, that's it. Only your device and your mobile phone are connected to that particular hotspot. However, it is extremely dangerous to connect to a third party's Wi-Fi. I would not recommend it for anyone to do that.
Okay, dealing then with hotspot. Okay, I've given you a hotspot, an opportunity, and my password comes up as 23456 on one occasion. You do your business, not a problem. Is it possible to latch onto my hotspot again later on?
Your device would naturally ask your permission to let me onto it, so you would know that I'm pairing back onto it. However, I would, out of principle, not share my hotspot with anyone.
Let's talk about AirDrop. Is it safe?
It depends on what settings you have on your device. If you have your device set up in such a way that you do not receive AirDrop, this is the way that most of us should have our devices set up. There is a possibility that someone may drop a malicious link onto your device, and when you touch it, it opens up a browser and can infect your phone this way. However, common sense really should be used in a case like this. Do not AirDrop. Do not have the settings on where you can receive AirDrop either.
Wow. So, judging by what you've said, nothing's safe. It's best not to have an Android or an iPhone, not even a Nokia. Just go to the local telephone box and queue at the bank. So, again, you've got this phone, and we all need to know. I mean, are there indicators for us to identify whether or not our phone's either been hacked or intercepted? I use this word intercepted because clearly it's always done. It can't be used in evidence, of course, it's illegal in this country, but it can be used for intelligence-based purposes. How would we know?
Modern day spyware is so sophisticated, in all honesty, you probably would not know. Unless you are very tech savvy and you understand how mobile phones and operating systems work, there may be a few little hints that would suggest that your phone had been intercepted and have had spyware embedded in it or have an active link elsewhere. However, the vast majority of the time, in pertaining to surveillance, you would not be aware that your phone is being monitored. However, from a malicious aspect, if a malicious actor was intending to steal your credentials, banking applications, access, etc., there would be little telltale signs, as their spyware would not be as sophisticated, generally speaking, as law enforcement or government agencies. So you would notice little things. Your phone may glitch. You may notice that your camera may have just mysteriously turned itself on, and you think, well, it could have been a pocket call or a pocket press, and it wasn't. But that would be your assumption. You wouldn't think twice. It could be something to the effect that a message or a couple of text messages on your phone have appeared or gone missing. You could have logged into an application. Your battery could be running down faster than usual. There are a number of little key features that would suggest there would be spyware in your phone. If this is the case, I know a lot of people's assumption is, well, all I'll do is reset my phone and start again. No, you cannot do this. What one needs to understand is once your phone has been hacked, a hacker has access to all the passcodes on your device. So when you set up a new phone, you're going to download the same applications and they're just coming across to the new phone because they've got your passcodes and they're back in your new device. So it's very important that in order to clear your device correctly, you get it forensically checked and forensically scanned, and the hacker who initiated the spyware in your device is properly removed from the device. So going and getting another handset or putting your SIM card in another device does not make any difference. It just migrates them across from your current handset to the new one.
Oh my God. Okay, a couple of other questions. So we've dealt with how we can tell, well, how we can't tell if my phone's been hacked. The truth is you can't tell, can you? You just have to go to an expert, someone like you, to check my phone once every 3 months to see whether or not it's been infiltrated, yes?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. When it comes to mobile phones then, okay, we've dealt with that the police can gain access to your phone. We've dealt with the manipulation of cell size, and we've dealt with how reliable some of these service providers are. What would you suggest in terms of a mobile phone having the perfect security for a phone?
Unfortunately, in the current climate, there is no perfect security for a mobile phone. I think the best form of security is education and actually understanding what we should and should not do pertaining to our mobile phones. Far too many of us have got our head down a rabbit hole concentrating on social media and what Joe Bloggs is doing next door and not concentrating on our own personal security. So it is really important that you understand and research how to secure yourself as best online and on your mobile phone, as opposed to sticking your head down a rabbit hole and concentrating on everything else that's going on.
An important question somebody asked is how can I protect my phone from unauthorized access by law enforcement? What do you say to that? I mean, you need the court order in the first place. Before anybody can access anything, you need the court order, don't you?
Well, a court order will be issued if a device needs to be, or there is need for a device to be under surveillance. But one needs to understand that no one will be none the wiser. And I distance myself from this because I'm not saying it does happen, but you just need to use a bit of common sense that it is not very difficult to access a device regardless of whether you've got a court order or not. However, once a court order has been issued, the evidence gained after the court order has been issued can be used in a court. So that's the difference. So once a court order has been issued and evidence has been monitored or extracted from a device whilst the court order was in play, that can be used in a court. However, anything prior to the court order being issued cannot be used in a court.
Okay, but it's still intelligence, isn't it?
But it's still intelligence. So it doesn't mean that there necessarily was not an interception to your device. One needs to understand that common sense needs to prevail. And if there's a very high valued case, one needs to know that would they really risk letting a service provider know, or as the CPS know, that they're putting an application in to monitor a particular device if that's a high profile person. My assumption, and this is my assumption, is that this will be kept under wraps and kept very quiet until they knew what was going on. And only after that, a court order would be issued.
Well, it's actually happened on one of our cases just before Encro. The news of Encro infiltration came about. We were on a very big case and messages were coming forth, and not from the Encro platform, of course, but kind of information that the Crown were coming from and they were disclosing couldn't have come from anywhere other than an Encro, but it wasn't anybody's kind of thought or process that Encro would have been infiltrated. And it was a Friday afternoon when the judge made that court order saying, okay, fine, you're tendering this information. What is the source of it? It was at that stage that the prosecution collapsed because they couldn't, as you correctly pointed out, rely on information in absence of a court order. So it does happen, but you've got to be live to it.
Yes, most definitely. Of course it happens. I think the biggest misunderstanding here is that many cases go before a court. However, one needs to understand that if you're running a defense team and it's your case pertains to something financial, you will have a forensic accountant who will assist you with your case and assist the forensics of your case. If you have a case that pertains to a mobile device, common sense really should be that, well, surely you should have a mobile expert to back you up, because a mobile expert would actually understand how data could have been leaked, how data could have been obtained, and be able to look at all the nooks and crannies pertaining to a mobile device and mobile networking systems to make sure that the case is transparent and everyone is on the same hymn sheet.
Wow. What type of spyware do law enforcement agencies use? Is it limited to one, or is there a variety?
There are a variety of spywares out there. The most notorious is the Pegasus spyware, as that can attack not only Android devices but the iOS systems. However, there are a number of other spywares that the law enforcement and malicious actors do use as well. And this could be the likes of dark matter, FinSpy, there are numerous other ones, and it doesn't have to be that specific one. It could be a variant of one. So the spyware could have been made a couple of years ago, and it would have been modified since then to become a new variant of that. So although it is authentically a dark matter spyware, it's dark matter version 2.0, if that makes sense.
Because it's got to be updated, isn't it? As
It has to.
it's
Yes,
got
it has to
continuously
update it.
fight the system, isn't it?
The way spyware works is no sooner has a particular software been made, there will be people out there trying to counteract that.
Yeah.
So it needs to advance itself. So as it's being chased,
Yeah.
it's trying to run off
Yeah.
into the distance
Yeah.
too at the same time. So everything needs to progress. So nothing stays bog standard as it was prior.
All right. You talk about law enforcement agencies using this type of spyware. Then you talk about other dark forces. When it comes to the average person, how readily available is it for them to purchase this, and where could they get this information from, this type of spyware from?
This is not available to general members of the public, the private sector. This is available to governments. However, there are rogue governments out there from other nations, other continents, that will happily obtain this spyware and attack people within another country. So someone from, and I will not mention the name, will possibly purchase that particular spyware, put it in the hands of a particular group of hackers, and they will then embed themselves on devices within a country such as ours.
So it's not computer world then? You can't get it from computer world?
No, most definitely not. You certainly wouldn't get it from there.
All right. Okay. Moving on. Privacy and concerns. And again, we get loads of questions on this. How secure are messages and calls on popular apps like WhatsApp, Signal, and iMessage?
Well, it all depends on what you're doing. It's common sense, really, that an open source code, which is used by the likes of Signal, are a lot safer than WhatsApp. WhatsApp is controlled by Meta, and it doesn't take a genius to work out how many breaches Meta have had and what they're doing behind our backs. So whilst people's assumption is, well, my WhatsApp messages are encrypted whilst in transit, it does not mean it's safe once it's on your device, and it does not mean their servers are not storing the data. They state that they've not been storing the data. However, more recently, one needs to understand, and this is going to become massive in the foreseeable future. The new Regulatory Powers Act has applied to have all social platforms compulsory for them to store all users' data for a minimum of 12 months. So if you're using Instagram or Facebook, WhatsApp, Snapchat, etc., if I cannot access your device, the government have now passed, or very close to passing, through the new Investigatory Powers Act, powers that allow them to go directly to the platform and obtain all your information from there.
But again, you said earlier that the information is on an app unique to the phone, not the service provider.
They pass through the servers prior to arriving on the device. So you need to understand, if you send me a record of something or a conversation, that will be stored on a server. Now, what they would need to do is just go to the platform itself and acquire the individual's conversations, as opposed to risk coming along and taking your mobile device that you may have wiped. So they can access every conversation you've had on every social platform now without even having your mobile phone at hand.
Wow. And it all boils down to law-making decisions.
Correct, yes. So one can assume they're on the safest mobile phone with the safest operating system, and no one's taken their phone away from them. However, if they're a person of interest, the authorities have every right to approach the platform and ask for a transcript of everything that you've been talking about on your phone, and that will be supplied to them. And they have to keep this for a minimum of 12 months.
Now, again, it's early stages. The legislation has recently been passed, but I'm confident, and I'm sure you may or may not disagree with this, unless you say there's a glitch with the server. 12 months is probably the minimum. Do you not foresee that in the future extending to 24 to 36? Because some of the bigger conspiracies, bigger cases, don't just operate over a 12-month period. It's like, years and years and years.
I think the key factor here is the wording, a minimum of 12 months. It doesn't state a maximum.
Okay, and in terms of service providers then, okay, you've clarified that point, but on service provider networks, how long is information stored?
Are we talking about mobile networking?
Mobile
Providers now. Okay, so talking about mobile providers, as far as I'm aware, they're all instructed to have a minimum of 12 months records. Now, it never used to be this way, however, it is now. So to do with the recent changes in the Investigatory Powers Act, that's either imminently about to be pushed through or just has been pushed through. Every mobile provider has to keep records for up to 12 months, a minimum.
Minimum. Any maximum in your head?
No, but it's common sense, really.
All right.
Data's like gold.
All right,
the more data, the better.
All right. So, common question we're asked is can my phone be hacked through the public Wi-Fi? And the reason we ask this is because there was an incident not so long ago where a young lad had gone to Spain and he'd used the Wi-Fi en route there and made a comment that kind of pertained to extremism. When he got there, he was arrested. He hadn't spoken to anybody other than a comment on a friend's or a group's Snapchat. Over to you.
It's common sense, really, if you go to an airport and connect to a public Wi-Fi within the airport, the Wi-Fi will be monitored. So all the traffic that is traveling through that particular network will be heavily monitored. There are modern AI tools that will pick up any code wording that will highlight an individual, and that more than likely would have been the case.
Mm-hmm. So you mean certain wording per se, for example, that related to extremism or some form of illicit activity can be identified automatically?
Through scanning the network traffic, yes, that's most definitely the case.
So it kind of sieves it out, basically?
It does, yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, fine.
This also pertains to the criminal sector. So if people attach themselves to a specific network, and this usually happens at cafes and coffee shops where individuals go and everybody teams up and gets onto the local Wi-Fi network. Yeah. These are heavily monitored, and the interception of traffic, malicious traffic, is monitored from the various devices that have been attaching to themselves to this network. And a great understanding can be understood from what's being said over that particular network and the data being received, etc.
Yeah, and as you say, even if you're not being monitored or tracked, it's a very good source of information gathering.
It's a very good source of intelligence.
Yeah.
So when individuals pull up at a bar or something to that effect, the network traffic coming out of that particular bar will be heavily monitored if it's a known place where criminals hang out. So every bit of transmission going in and out of there, every conversation, text message, email being sent will be getting sieved and being monitored.
Okay. Just on a final point then, and I think you've gone over it on multiple occasions, but we've got to ask, I'm sorry, our viewers want to know, what personal information is at risk if my phone is hacked? Now, before you answer this, I always say it's as good as your phone. Whatever's in your phone, it is what it is. That's how good as it gets. Am I wrong in saying that?
It depends what level of hack it is. If it's a malicious hack, I think the best analogy for this is if you can imagine a container ship with a load of containers on it, the ship being your phone, the containers being your applications. If someone's hacked an application, they're stuck within that application, they're stuck within that container. Spyware would be taking over the whole ship, which means it would have access to every container on the ship. So the more sophisticated the hack, the more access they would have. So sophisticated spyware would be able to access every part of the device. So it will be the equivalent of being user level. So you as a user and the hacker would have exactly the same access. Everything you do, the hacker would be able to do, or whoever's infiltrated your device. If it's more of a malicious act that's targeted at a specific application, it will be embedded in that application or within that container, and it will stay within that zone. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. But now my phone is hacked, and I phone your phone. Does it mean your phone is automatically infiltrated?
If your phone is hacked?
Yeah, and I call you?
No. But it will have a record, if someone is listening in, it will have a record of what you are saying to me and what I'm saying to you.
So the hacking in itself is kind of unique to the phone?
Unique to a particular individual and a device. No, it doesn't, no.
Okay.
However, if it's a large crime syndicate, and we need to understand police forces operate like businesses, and the proceeds of crime is how they generate their money back.
Yeah.
So if they're going to look at an individual, one needs to understand that to inject spyware into certain devices can cost anywhere up to £50,000 per device.
£50,000.
So would you really If you're monitoring a specific network of individuals, if there's 5 of them, would you put spyware in five phones? No, you will put it into one phone. However, the other 4 individuals will be speaking to that one individual.
Yeah.
So you would gain intelligence of the entire network. If it became clear that it was a very sophisticated network and there was a lot more involved, then other devices would be tapped as well.
Future of mobile security. What developments are being made in mobile phone security now? Where do you see it going?
If I could just stop you there, my personal assumption on this, and other people who work within the sector, is that it is rather unfortunate that mobile security has been left behind. And the reason for this is that cybersecurity firms, developers of software to secure devices, primarily concentrate their attention on large corporations, computer networking systems. And the long and the short of the reasoning behind this is it can be easily controlled within a corporate organization, whereas mobile phones are moving all over the place. Computer systems are incorporated within an organization or a building, and it can be monetized a lot easier through a corporation. So the simple answer to your question is, why is mobile phone security being left behind? Yes, it is. They're slowly playing catch up now. However, because it cannot be controlled or monetized to the extent that computer systems can within corporations, this is the reason that it's lacking behind at the moment, yes.
But what developments do you see? What will they change?
At the moment, there are not too many developments that are appeasing to the eye. I know there are a number of elements coming into securing our networks, which is paramount to securing devices that attach to these networks. However, at the moment, our networks being under attack, it is difficult to say where the future lies and what to expect for the future. All we can do is sit and hope and wait for a bit of good news.
A question I'm usually asked is, when you've got as part of your phone security the mobile phone facial recognition, can that be surpassed with a kind of model-looking picture of oneself, of their face, a model of a face?
I haven't personally used it, but I'm well aware that there is software out there that can manipulate an individual's facial features in order to bypass the facial recognition feature on a passcode for a phone. One needs to also understand that in order to set up facial recognition on a phone, you need to set up a password prior to doing this. So if your phone is locked with your facial image, all that we need to do is cancel that and enter a passcode. So having a facial image or facial recognition is not, or biometrics being your fingerprint, is not any more secure than a passcode.
The future of the mobile phone security. What advancements are being made in mobile phone security?
There are a number of advancements that are being made to secure mobile phones. However, one needs to look no further than our networking system. And this is at the forefront of security concerns at the moment. We need to understand that we need to secure our phone networks before we start securing our devices themselves, because the networks are the biggest vulnerability that we are suffering at the moment within the UK.
You know, and again, I think a lot of people say they're prone to external forces.
They are prone to external forces, and due to the constant interference with mobile networking systems and cell towers, hence the reason that probably a lot of people out there will notice over the past few years a substantial decrease in the performance of mobile phone signals. So I know a lot of people moan about this, complain about this, and cannot understand this, and this is due to a substantial amount of cyber attacks against cell phone towers.
Okay. I mean, I'm just going to splinter off the topic and kind of refer to a James Bond film whereby there was a cyber attack in one of their films, and you've got a satellite in the sky, and what they were trying to do is to blow up that satellite so mobile phones literally stopped working. Is it as simple as that? Is it just one satellite in the sky?
I think you'll be referring to something of an EMP attack.
Yeah.
So it's an electronic magnetic pulse, magnetic pulse. No, it wouldn't be that. I'd be more concerned about the traffic, network traffic traveling across our mobile networks being intercepted, being manipulated, and access to our devices ultimately gained through flaws within our networking system.
And again, of recent, there was talk about what was happening in the Middle East. There was talk about pipe work, satellite information, cables under the sea being literally slit in half so phones didn't work. If that had come to fruition, do you think that was true or a waste of time, or is it just political scaremongering?
I think it's safer just to steer clear of such topics, as there's so much misinformation and disinformation out there at the moment that we'd have to sit and wait for a substantial amount of time before we get the truth, but as to what the circumstances were pertaining to the attacks on internet cables across the sea.
So, hidden threats, and again, a common question we're asked is, can our mobile phone be hacked through seemingly harmless apps?
Yes, this is a massive concern at the moment, particularly to do with the Android app store. A number of malicious apps are being removed on a daily basis, and the reason behind this is that their vetting system is not as efficient as the iOS's pertaining to what applications are put on their store. A number of apps have been recorded as having keyloggers on there. So when people download applications, and the worst ones being dating applications, a few banking applications, maps, there are a host of applications that have been downloaded that do not only do what they portray to do, but they do other activities as well, such as having keyloggers on them, activation of the microphones, activation of the camera without you knowing. So as an end user, what I would suggest is, when downloading an application, do not download apps that you are not going to use on a day-to-day basis and that are not well known. It's important to obviously use and only have absolute necessity apps on your device. Do not download streaming apps, particularly pertaining to sport. At the moment, the football's on. There are a number of apps out there that people are downloading, and they've got keyloggers on them. So they're recording every keystroke that you make on your device. When you put your passcodes in, they're recording those too. So an attacker would have all your passcodes or passwords, and they can use a bit of social engineering, gather intelligence on you, and begin to access other accounts just by watching what you've typed on your phone. And this is simply because you have downloaded the wrong application.
So when I download an app, personal experiences, download an app and it says, would you like to give it full access to your phone? Obviously the answer I go through is no. The generic answer usually people is yes, because they can't be asked to go back into it. But that's the reason why.
That is the reason why you should not. However, a lot of these applications are quite clever in the manner in which they've been set up, because they will not let you press the option no and install the app. You have to accept all the settings and all the permissions in order for the app to install on your phone. So people get frustrated because they cannot download the app, so they automatically press yes. And this gives them permission to many other features on the phone. And by giving them permission to the other features on the phone, this gives them to access to such things as your microphone, your camera, your keypad, etc. And you will never know what they're recording and what they're sending to their servers.
I mean, I feel so silly now. I mean, on multiple occasions where I've downloaded an app and it says, would you like to give full access? And on the third time, I just simply willingly say yes. And I think to myself, if that's someone like me, I feel sorry for the user, the end result. I mean, it's big problems. It is big problems.
Yeah.
How can malicious QR codes compromise a phone's security? Recently, there was that fiasco up north where there was a car park and somebody put on a bogus QR code for a mode of payments. What happens there?
So what will happen is you'll be diverted to a malicious browser, is often the case. And once you've been diverted to this malicious browser, it then searches for vulnerabilities and exploits the vulnerabilities within your phone. And once this is done, it can insert keyloggers, it can access various parts of your phone that send the attacker back information pertaining to yourself. So this is where you need to be careful as to what you take pictures of, what QR codes you take images of. Are they authentic? I know there are a couple of applications and bits of software out there where you can authenticate them prior to activating them. However, just be very careful, as there are so many malicious apps out there. It's difficult to say which ones are malicious and which ones are not, as the market is totally flooded with applications at the moment.
So right, just come back on that then. Look, you're at the car park, you're with your partner, and you're trying to pay for your parking. Now, taking into account the British summer, it's probably raining at this stage, and you see this QR code, someone like you who's tech savvy, how are you going to, I mean, you can take time out to see whether or not it's an authentic QR code, or can you not just identify it to the naked eye?
No, they're very well constructed. It's very difficult to tell, and the likes of myself make mistakes on a regular basis too. So it's not just general members of the public. It's very difficult to distinguish between a malicious code and an authentic code.
What is location spoofing, and how does it affect my phone's technology?
Location spoofing, I assume that you're using either a VPN or an application that does not give away your true location status and gives away another location status. This is merely just spoofing. A lot of people are under the assumption that it gives away a real life scenario where you're actually not in that specific location. So they think if they put a VPN on, no one can track me down or no one knows where I really am. But in all honesty, there is software there that can work out where you are. A lot of VPNs are also malicious. A lot of people do not understand this. They think by inserting a VPN or installing a VPN and using it that they're entirely safe and the traffic coming to and from their device is entirely safe. This can be far from the truth. If you're going to download a VPN, I would suggest that you use a well-known one such as Proton or Nord or something to that effect. The lesser well-known ones tend to be quite often very malicious, and they will record a lot of activity that you are up to on your device. And do not for 1 minute think that what you're sending is encrypted on some of these apps.
So what can I do then to get it encrypted?
I would suggest that you use a well-known app such as Nord or Proton that have a decent reputation behind them.
We're seeing a rise in mobile phone theft. It's a national pandemic. Okay, what should one do as soon as their phone is stolen?
It all depends on the circumstances. I think we need to be more vigilant and aware of our surroundings. Far too many of us get stuck down a rabbit hole and are too busy concentrating on what's on the screen and not what's around us. I think user fault is the biggest concern at the moment. We need to be aware of our surroundings and what we're doing and where we're going before we start pointing the finger at anyone else.
But again, look, I accept we shouldn't be pointing our finger at anybody else, and we should be vigilant of our surroundings. But once my phone is stolen, what should I do?
It's important to understand to set the correct settings on your device so that nobody else can activate certain or access certain parts of your phone, such as your cloud or account. It's important to have two-factor or multi-factor authentication. This is paramount if you take your security seriously. A lot of people skip past these phases and they don't think their phone will get stolen. And then once it's stolen, they turn around and cry wolf. But it's important to understand that two-factor or multi-factor authentication will go a long way in securing your phone if it's stolen. In order for an attacker to gain access to applications or make changes to your account on the device, codes would need to be sent to an email address or another device. And if they do not have access to the other device, they cannot access the applications that they intend to on your phone. So I think it's really important that people understand how important two-factor and multi-factor authentication are.
But it sounds really boring, man. Getting a two-factor authentication code, downloading it, trying to get into somewhere, then you got to wait for the authentication code and for it to be logged on. Is it that necessary?
It most definitely is, yes. Unfortunately, we live in a very fast-paced world and a fast-paced society where everything needs to be done spur of the minute. And if it's not done spur of the moment, then it's not a necessity for us to have. That's the assumption. Well, that's until your phone gets stolen. I think once your phone gets stolen, you have other thoughts and you slow down and think before you act.
And soon change your tune and get the biometrics done and two-fold authentication done.
Most
as well.
definitely that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Just coming back on it then. Look, can the police use my biometrics data like fingerprints or facial recognition to unlock it?
I haven't personally seen the software. However, I'm very well briefed on the fact that there is software that can bypass biometrics and facial recognition to gain access to a mobile phone, yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Faraday bags. What are Faraday bags and why do people use them?
Faraday bag blocks the signal, any signal coming in or being emitted from a device. So it's a bag that's made of a specific type of material. You can put your laptop in it, you can put your mobile phone in it, and it will not receive any signal and it will not emit any signal whilst it's in there. It keeps it in a private and a contained zone, and a lot of people use these when they go for private meetings or they go to locations where they do not want their device to be tracked. I would suggest that anyone who takes their security and their privacy seriously invest in one of these. You can get them from most online websites. I would suggest paying a little bit more for one than getting a cheaper one, as the cheaper ones tend to not work as well.
Why don't you just switch your phone off?
Well, by switching your phone off doesn't mean it's necessarily off. When you power a mobile phone off, all it does is switch the interface off. So you as an end user will see a black screen. However, your phone is still running in the background. It still pings off every cell tower it goes past. It still pings off every Wi-Fi network it goes past. Your phone is fully functional and fully operational in the background. From the system level downwards, everything is working. Your phone can be tracked while it's off. So don't for one moment think because your phone's turned off that no one can find your location. That's far from the truth.
But again, your phone's off though. I mean, clearly we have cases where the Crown serve evidence and they say your phone was switched on from this time to this time and thereafter it was switched off. We don't know where you went to. Is that really true?
That could be the case. It depends on the device and whether the battery was taken out of a device. One needs to understand, if we're on about feature phones or burner phones, if a battery is removed from a device, the device does go dead. In a smartphone that has an embedded battery in it, this cannot be the case.
Wow. So just because you think your phone's off, it's not off.
It's on. It's just the screen's off. That's all it means.
That's terrible. Look, thank you for your time, but there's lots of questions in relation to opinions. You see lots of solicitors on social media trying to answer questions in relation to mobile phones, namely PIN codes and cell sites. How accurate is that information?
It's surprisingly inaccurate. A lot of the information put out there to someone like myself can be quite frustrating to hear and listen to. Unfortunately, my personal assumption is certain individuals, and we won't go into names here, put out content on mass as opposed to quality. So it's all about driving irrelevant information down people's throats in order to get clicks and likes for themselves, including follows. It's really important to understand that if I'm a mobile phone expert and I understand and have an in-depth knowledge within mobile phones, that although I know a solicitor, it does not mean I can instruct within law. Yeah. And vice versa. I feel that there is a substantial amount of information pertaining to mobile phones from certain solicitors that has been put out there that is absolute nonsense, to be honest with you.
Okay, look, let's go back to the defense world then. I have a mobile phone case. My general rule of thumb is to question everything. If they're relying on co-location, get an expert. If they're relying on interpretation, get an expert. If they're relying on cell site, get an expert. Am I right in doing that, or should I just agree the Crown's case?
I think you are very correct in this. You've hit the nail on the head. My understanding, at least, is if someone's involved in a case pertaining to finances or financial fraud, you would get a forensic accountant in to back your case. If your case pertains to something regarding a mobile phone, why would your defense team not at least attempt or make the offer to involve a specialist in mobile phones, as they could possibly exploit vulnerabilities or faults within the case and assist you?
And provide, obviously, an alternative narrative, isn't it?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Now, this is a tricky one. It's going to get you into a lot of hot water. But people ask, what's the number one tip you'd provide to avoid police tracking you?
Educate yourselves. Far too many people in today's day and age, particularly the type who are concerned about the police following them, do not do enough research and are oblivious to how advanced technology is now. A lot of us do not understand that it does not take a police officer to actually monitor our movements. Everything is done through intelligence, AI, machine learning, and interception of digital communications.
But again, like, you've bamboozled me. I mean, not that I'm dodgy, of course, but you know, when I leave the home and I'm busy, I switch my phone off, and I'm under the impression that's it, it's finished. Nobody can track me. But you've actually said just because your phone's off doesn't mean you can't be tracked. Not because I'm doing anything wrong, of course, but the fact that I can be tracked was a myth. I mean, people think if you switch your phone off, that's the end of it.
Of course it's a myth. If your phone's switched off, all it does is power the interface off. The phone is still running in the background.
Okay, it's been all over the news, and I think you're actually the key to solving this case. The Jay Slater missing fiasco over in Spain. And the reason why I say I think you're the key to this is because clearly in this day and age, everything boils down to and rests with mobile phone, cell site, tracking, co-location. How important is a person like you to finding Jay Slater?
First of all, I'll point out that I'm from the private sector, so I will not get involved in a case
But
pertaining to that.
If I asked you, I instructed you on a private basis.
The law enforcement within Spain, it's within their jurisdiction. I'm under the impression, or under the understanding at least, that a particular police force from the UK have now been flown out to assist with the case. Their abilities, their experience, and the facilities that they have at hand are so vast that no one from the private sector could match what they could do. So my understanding is that it is currently in the best hands it can be in. It is true that it's of paramount importance to obtain digital evidence, the devices themselves, and understand where the devices were traveling to and what was being said, transcripts that were being said, etc., on these devices prior and since the investigation started.
But Matt, you've already said, look, at the end of the day, just because a phone's switched off doesn't mean it can't be tracked. This phone is switched off, so why can't it be tracked?
That's correct. Now, there are a few reports going around stating something to the effect of the device has been found at the last known location. Whether this is true or not, I don't know. I am not following the investigation myself. I have far too much going on in my own life to be bothered with that. However, I stuck my nose in a little bit initially just to test the water and see what was going on. But I'm not one to sit there day in, day out monitoring that specific investigation. But it is my understanding that, or at least I've heard, that the device was found. If that's the case, they will do a forensic analysis on that particular device and link any other devices that were communicating to that device. Obviously, the other people involved in this case, or suspects within this case, will have their devices monitored. I think it's a bit premature to talk too much on this case, as we don't want to jeopardize anything that the police are doing at the moment. I understand that a lot of people online are bemoaning the Spanish authorities for not talking to the media, but one needs to understand the Spanish police force work in a totally different manner to the British police force. Here in the UK, we are aware and under the impression that the police will update us and hold news conferences on a regular basis, updating the public on what is going on. The Spanish police, not to say that they're not as capable as the British police, just do not operate in that manner. However, I do think they're very efficient at what they do. They do have a game plan in place, and I believe it won't be a matter of time before they manage to get to the nuts and bolts of this.
Okay, just on a final note, coming back to mobile phones then, it's, even if your phone's switched off, it can be tracked. But say if your battery's dead, you've not switched your phone, if your battery's not working no more.
Well, depending on what type of device this is. Now, I've done a bit of research and interacted with other like-minded people from various countries pertaining to issues regarding this. And yes, if your battery is dead, the device can still, modern day smartphones can still be tracked. I haven't personally done it. However, I am aware, very aware, that this is possible.
Okay, so we're coming to an end, and look, thank you very much for taking time out. Just wrapping it up then on an opinion. So based on what you've said, nobody's safe. Then again, some have nothing to hide, others may do. But in as far as you're concerned, is it worthwhile having a mobile phone then? Smartphone, digital, analog, or whatever? I mean, if everywhere you go you're being tracked by the authorities, or you've got rogue states trying to infiltrate you, or alternatively you've got homegrown people trying to rob your data, is it worthwhile having a phone then?
Well, I think we'll get left behind in society if we didn't have a mobile phone. Mobile phones are paramount to our progression in society and our day-to-day conductivity of our businesses, etc. So yes, we do need our mobile phones, and we just have to adapt to the current climate and the settings and be aware of the dangers of privacy and infiltration to these devices, and just be alert to the fact that whatever's on your device, you're not the only one looking at it, regardless of who it may be.
Somebody's watching. Matt, thank you very much for coming in.
My pleasure.
You've certainly been an eye-opener. I mean, high-tech investigations are the people to instruct. Now, if you want to instruct this guy, contact us, and I'm sure we can work well together.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much for having me on the show today.